But how do we channel that stress? And how do we conquer that stress?
Put our iPhones down, take off our headphones, and just try and turn everything off. I have a son who loves to camp, and he goes out hiking, and he's away from everything for 2 days, and he's very happy. And I think that's a good thing we should all do at times.
JoyScore Live, Episode 5, Chapter 4, as we dive deeper into JoyScore and we move further along in the program. We're back for another week. My name's Chris Sylvester. I'm with Jay Holloway. I'm with Zachary Anderson Yaxheimer, and we have an action-packed hour as we dive into Chapter 4, Joy in Health and Happiness. Today we focus on stress, and we have a special guest. We have some examples of current events, and we might have something that relates to you, the viewer, the listener. Everybody deals with stress on a day-to-day basis. But how do we channel that stress? And how do we conquer that stress? That's going to be the question we hope to answer for you by the time we get wrapped up here on JoyScore Live. As always, you can get at us on social media at JoyScoreInc on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and JoyScoreInc.com to sign up for our wait list as we get ready to launch the app this summer, along with games and everything else here on JoyScore Live. But first things first, after transitioning away from Chapter 3 relationships last week, and as we dive into stress, everything sort of correlates together. You have a good relationship, you don't have as much stress. You have a bad relationship, there is some added stress. You're going to see a trend as we move along here on JoyScore Live. Now, with every chapter beginning with a pre-quiz, the fourth asks you, what % of the time are you, the reader, you, the viewer, under stress? Now, as always, these are out of 90. You can strongly agree, be neutral about it, disagree, or strongly disagree. I want to get your guys' take. How much stress is in your life today?
Well, how much time do we have left? I know for my quiz I had a 58, so I'm pretty stressed, but I know where I need some improvement, but I do realize I have a lot of stress in my own life, and it's might be a bit self-conflicted, but that's where my stress comes from. Not for Zach, though.
Well, Jay, I was discussing with you before the show, and this is easily my lowest chapter as far as the quizzes go. I know I mentioned the number to you, and you kind of jumped out of your shoes. I know you haven't heard this, Chris, yet. So they're out of 90, correct?
Correct.
And I'll give you one guess at what I had. What do you think I had for stress?
Middle of the pack, 45.
44.
Ooh.
For stress.
I'm buying a lottery ticket after the show.
You should.
But, I mean, I had a 44, and I know I'm not the most, I don't maybe show it as often, but I guess knowing myself, I can be a very stress-filled life. We all do lots of different things.
Sure.
But for me, stress is just interesting. Maybe it's I don't deal with it right, which we're going to have lots of expert information coming up later, but it's just this is my lowest score when it comes to a pre-quiz. Like, I was shocked. I didn't think, I was like, all right, I'm a pretty happy individual, but there's more to it than just joy. Stress is a very big part of it.
The book, towards the beginning of the chapter, lists stress as one of the major roadblocks in the journey to joy. How can you live a joyful life while dealing with stress? And sure, stress is one of life's very few guarantees. You'll encounter stress at one point or another, but how are you going to manage the stress? How are you going to find the source where the stress is coming from?
I mean, for me, I think it's management and the source. I think sometimes I know I'm just doing lots of things, and we all do lots of things in different stages of our lives, but for me, it's managing it. What do? Honestly, sometimes I sit in a room and I just do nothing, go on Netflix, and that's not the way to manage stress.
Yeah, I mean, we all have different paths, and we have different ways to deal with stress. We were talking about off air amongst each other about our different ways of dealing with stress. I know for myself recently how I deal with stress because we live in LA, right? We deal with traffic every single time on the freeway.
Every minute, every day.
So for those that like movies, Bad Boys, they had the famous term woosah. That is now my term of choice. And trying to be, you cannot always be at every place in an instant. Sometimes you get to relax a little bit to say, you know what, I'll get there when I get there. In California, or I guess in our own age, we want to do everything or please everybody right now. You can't do that. But I think having that sense of, again, relationships, self-esteem, helps you be more relaxed, and that limits your stress going forward.
I think one of the biggest things any viewer, any reader will take away from Chapter 4, Stress, would be something along the lines of what brings us life's greatest joy can also bring us our greatest stress.
Mm-hmm.
When our relationships are strong, we're less stressed. When they're not so strong, we're more stressed. When our financial situations are positive, we're less stressed. When we don't have the finances necessary to get us through day-to-day life, here comes the stress again. There are many things and many instances in which we will encounter stress. But as you move along Chapter 4, the hope and the goal is to understand how to channel that stress into motivation and how to move that stress and put it and make it a positive in other areas of your life.
I just think the big thing is, how do you make something so negative or something that is actually maybe not be negative in your life? Because sometimes self-esteem, that could be something low. Your thoughts, you might have bad thoughts, bad relationships, bad financial situations, as you mentioned. But sometimes stress is just something as simple as overload or just thinking about something too much. What do you think?
Well, I think it's, you have to realize what you control and what you can't control. You cannot control everything you do. You control some part of your life, but not everything that you do. You can't control traffic on a 405. You can't control people at work that are in a bad mood. That's not in your control. You control how you behave amongst those people, how you react to it, but you cannot overthink it, or let's say, oh, I had a bad day because I got here 5 minutes late. You can't control being late to work. You can leave a little early, but you can't control the end result of that.
And I know one of my favorite parts of this chapter is, yes, there's defining stress, the symptoms of stress, which we'll get into later in the show, but for me, it's managing it. And something as simple as just considering the source and finding different techniques into which I should manage my stress. And sometimes for me, it's just simply sitting down and breathing and just doing a to-do list, something I don't even have with my lack of organizational skills.
We mentioned everything sort of correlates with each other here on the show. We opened up Chapter 1 talking about thoughts, Chapter 2 touching on self-esteem, last week touching on relationships. With a higher self-esteem and with more positive thoughts comes, one would imagine, a better way to handle adversity, a better way to handle stress. With a low self-esteem and a negative mindset, when life's stresses come at you, how are you going to get back up?
That's a good point. I mean, if you don't have that foundation of, in the beginning, of self-esteem, you can't get out of that stress hole. You just, I guess, the sunken place, as so many people said in this movie, Get Out. You have to get yourself together from a personal level, and then you can get out of things on the outside you can't always control. So I think you have to have a good balance of your own personal self to limit having a stress-filled life.
I saw something in the chapter. It says, when trapped in the cycle of stress, you're unable to see. Something as simple as that. You get stuck in like this circle of stress, or just being, I got this, this and this. And then all of a sudden you have so many things around you, and it's just, sometimes you got to take a step back and see.
It's all about self-composure. When it comes down to stress, sometimes you're receiving stress from just about every aspect of your life, and it feels like you're getting sucked into this black hole, and there is no return to the surface. But with a high self-esteem, healthy habits, and a positive mindset along the lines of I will get past this, and I'll be stronger once I get past this, can lead to the end result of joy.
I think it's like a two-part dilemma. First, you need self-worth and self-belief in yourself, and two, your circle of people around you. I mean, you can be the best joy score in your own self-esteem. That's great. But if you don't have people around you that give you that sense of encouragement, saying, you know what, it's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. It limits your stress.
That's a good point, Jake. Is coming into today, I was thinking, all right, you can try and identify the sources of stress. But then I came in thinking, what do you do when, all right, you might have your own things, but some people can manage much better than other people. But how do you help someone else? And how do you help them out of their stress, or identify when someone else is in a very stressful situation, like, say, myself, when I'm running around, when we're working together, and you just notice I'm very stressed?
Well, like we talked to you a while back, you had problems with whatever it was. I'm not going to say on air, that's your personal business, but I had experience in what your flaw was because I had my own experience. If I know how to handle it, I couldn't give you advice about that. I can't say Zack's going to be okay because I know what you went through. That's how I can help you out. If you were around somebody else that know what you went through, you would still be stressed right now. Now you're just free and relaxed. Everything's good, but you have to pick people that helps you fix your problems if you can't do it all by yourself.
It's very important to find the root in where the stress is coming from.
Right.
A lot of times we walk around, we drive around, we sit around, we wonder what's plaguing us, what's really bothering us. We try and leap over what the issue really is. We try and leap over the root and say, oh, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. The biggest mistake one can make when trying to relieve stress is not recognizing the root of the stress. It's like a root in a garden. How is it going to go away if you don't attack it? Yeah, it's ugly. Yeah, it's a pain. It's going to keep growing back unless you really take the action and you really put in the work to get past it. For those in denial of where the stress is coming from, that's not the way to go about it. Mm-hmm. The stress will continue, and over time, like a weed, the stress will grow from its root, grow, and spread to other areas of your life. Stress is unavoidable. We've all been stressed. We might be a little stressed about something else right now.
We were stressed last night. Just last night. Over something minuscule. And that can sometimes be the worst part. Over a small thing. Sometimes small things have to remain small. When you're stressed out, those small little things that make you on your nerves get bigger and bigger. You get more stressed and more stressed. You get more frustrated. And that leads to what? Doing bad distractions, i.e. drugs, alcohol, things you should be doing. But since you're so stressed out, you're trying to cope for that with, I would say, crazy results for it. But that helps you limit the stress for a short period of time, not for the long term. With the JoyScore and with knowing who you are and who your friends are, it helps you limit those stress problems, but also having sense of mind not to going to other resorts to limit the stress for a short period of time, but for a long period of time.
Dr. B, the maestro of JoyScore, loves this saying. Keeping score is the Wheaties for everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
The breakfast of champions.
Yep.
Keeping score. And JoyScore out of 900. Being in tune with yourself. How can you be in tune with yourself if you're stepping over and avoiding what you're stressed out about? Or you see a small issue and you blow it out of proportion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the big thing is you just gotta deal with. You mentioned how blowing it out of proportion. You get stuck in this circle of, all right, you're in this rotating circle of stress, and then you sit there and you just, all right, it's something little like I have a homework assignment. I'm a student still, and I have a homework assignment, and it's just nagging because I haven't done it. While say someone else maybe has a payment due, or someone else is having a baby or 3 babies cry at the same time. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes it's just maybe you're dealing with all 3 at the same time. It's just a matter of trying to identify what to do and like how to not necessarily attack things, but just how you go about things and what order you do to relieve your stress, or what you need to relieve your stress first in order to continue and break that circle of just being stressed and stuck and not be going anywhere. You got to be able to walk forward.
Now, stress goes beyond being in a tough mental place, in a tough mental position. Obviously, when stressed, you sit back and, oh, I'm so stressed. Oh, I've had a long day. I'm so stressed. But getting down to the nitty-gritty of stress, it can also cause a number of medical issues, especially down the road in your life. Once you become older, once you have other things to deal with health-wise that may impact stress. And one of our special guests today, Dr. Stuart Fischer, a cardiologist at nearby Los Alamitos Medical Center, where he has spent the last 33 years. We're going to dive into some of the health issues that stress can bring to one's day-to-day life. As a cardiologist, he sees it on a day-to-day basis. So we're going to bring him in here momentarily, and there are a number of articles. If you just go on your favorite search engine and you search stress or stress amongst millennials, stress amongst today's human beings, you'll find so many studies where there is a root to the problem and how it spreads elsewhere. Depression, sadness, unhealthy eating habits, lack of sleep, just to name a few. And as we dive deeper into joy and health and happiness, we will touch on nutrition and fitness and how stress can sort of affect those things if you're letting it plague your life. But first things first, we're going to welcome in Dr. Stuart Fischer, a cardiologist at Los Alamitos Medical Center. He's been there since 1985. Dr. Fischer, thanks so much for hopping on the program and joining us here this evening.
Well, it's my pleasure being here. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm sure you heard a little bit of our conversation here to open things up. Stress, you see it, you deal with it on an everyday basis. I'm sure from time to time you are stressed as well. You may be thinking about work at the moment and a little stressed out regarding what you have to do on a day-to-day basis. But as far as health is concerned, what sort of health issues can stress lead to?
Well, I think I came here tonight specifically to discuss stress and cardiovascular disease, but I think the three of you have hit it very well that there are so many aspects of disease. We all hear about gastrointestinal disease. There are different pulmonary diseases. You hear about lowering your immune level. Someone was telling me the other day that they'd heard that former President Bush, when his wife died, that immediately after she died, he had to go back into the hospital, lowered his immunity. He became ill. So there are so many things, sort of what you just said, that if you just Google stress, how it impacts your entire life. In cardiovascular diseases, there are so many disease processes we deal with. We talk about stress and hypertension. If someone has long-standing stress, can they have increased catecholamines, which can cause vasoconstriction of the arteries, which can lead to hypertension? And now if you have hypertension, do you have an increased risk for cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, etc.? So stress really can play a role in your everyday life. I have patients that I hear who are stress eaters. They may have just had a problem with a friend, problem with a grade, something like that. Next thing you know, they're having a, quote, pity party, and suddenly they're eating big tubs of ice cream as if that's going to make them better. Stress is real. We deal with stress all the time. There is one entity that actually is fascinating. You've all heard the term broken heart or broken heart syndrome. Mm-hmm. That's real. There's an entity called takotsubo. That's a Japanese term. What it actually means is it's a Japanese bowl which has a very large outpouching below and very thin above. If you think of a heart like a football, there is an entity where someone who's had an extreme stressful moment, loss of a loved one, can actually start complaining of chest pain, be brought into an emergency room and have an electrocardiogram, which looks like they're having a heart attack. And if you go ahead and do an angiogram, which are things that I used to do, and you look at the heart, first of all, the heart does look like that like a balloon. There's part of it which is ballooned out, other part that's thinned out and isn't squeezing, and their whole heart is squeezing poorly. But when you look at their coronary arteries, they're normal. So you wonder, are they having a heart attack or not? And that's being studied. And basically, these are people with normal coronary arteries who the day before had a normal heart, but now have a heart that's ballooned out. And it's all secondary to an incredible stressful event in their life. And that's called broken heart syndrome, or the real name is Takotsubo syndrome. And it's a real entity. We deal with this all the time.
Yeah, I'm going to hold off on the official term for it so I don't botch it too much. But that was one of the things I wanted to get your take on, and you pretty much took it up with Barbara Bush, the former First Lady, passing away a couple of weeks ago. It was highly publicized. George Bush Sr. Was sick with the broken heart syndrome. So I'm sure you've had to deal with that a time or two in your 33-year career at Los Alamitos Medical Center. Oftentimes when we go to the doctor for whether it be a cold or a stomach flu or an ache or a pain, they prescribe us something. They give us tips on what we should do more of, what we should do less of. When someone comes to you with a broken heart syndrome, what's your response?
Well, first of all, if someone comes to me with, quote, broken heart syndrome, I'm actually usually seeing them in a hospital. It's an acute event. It's as if they are having a heart attack. I do see patients all the time that are depressed, stressed, and we talk about it. We talk about ways of relieving stress. These are some of the things I think Bhupendra talked about in the book as we're dealing with the JoyScore and dealing with improving your stress load. We see people, there are people who come into my office and have what we call white coat hypertension, meaning if they were home and having their blood pressure taken, it's fine. But the stress of walking into a physician's office, you take their blood pressure, it's now in the hypertensive range. So these are things we have to deal with. You try and do it, at least I've tried to do it for years, holistically. You talk about patients changing their lifestyle, exercise, losing weight, but sometimes you actually have to use medications on these patients. So it's a real phenomenon. It isn't just someone sitting around saying, gee, wouldn't it be nice to lower stress? It's a real problem, and it causes real disease.
Now, Doc, do you really see like a age range that's more of a high stress age, or is it more all different ages that are always stressed out?
I think it can be all stressed out. I think as we live in an era now, and you guys touched on it, it's incredible. I think, if we want to use the term millennials, but people have so many more stresses. We're living in instant data, which can stress you out. Mm-hmm. We think we're all so much more knowledgeable with our iPhones. But again, I think it's more stressful having all that data constantly coming at us. So I've seen young patients, actually more recently young patients that are coming in with hypertension. Mm-hmm. Some of it's stress-related, dealing with some of the realities of what we're dealing with in the world, which I'm sure you'll talk about later. But we see it. Obviously, as a cardiologist, I'll tend to see an older population. You start seeing people in their 70s, 80s. But, you look around in hospitals, there are people having myocardial infarctions, heart attacks in their 40s and in their 50s. So we just have to take it one patient at a time. But, talk about relieving stress. One of the things I'll tell every patient, and that some people don't always realize, you touched on it before, talking about money and other things. What you don't realize and you begin to realize when you lose some of it is that if you have your health, you're the richest person in the world. That can get you through a lot of stressful situations. What you also said before about learning to deal with stress, but you realize that every day is a unique day. You're going to have a stressful situation come about and you're going to learn how to handle it, but just around the corner may be another stressful situation. So it's keeping your guard up and always working to keep those stress levels down.
There's a growing teen epidemic, and I've read a number of articles about it regarding stress and what some of the quote-unquote struggles are of being a teenager, being a young person in 2018, in this 21st century. Many teens put a lot of pressure on themselves and internally create stress with social media and, if I don't look good in this picture, then I can't post, but if I don't post, then people are going to forget about me, so I guess I'm going to post this picture, but I'm not happy about it, and running circles in their own minds. And it's sort of common, and I'd say more common than not, that a young person, a millennial per se, goes through that. How many as you said, the majority of your patients come at an older age. But how many times have you had to deal with stress that is literally and almost simply internally caused? Obviously, financially, there's only so much you can control at times. So, if you're having trouble with your significant other, there's only so much you can control. If you have a history of health in genetics, again, there's only so much you can control. But I feel like we are seeing more and more today than ever internal stress being created by everyday habits and just being on the iPhone.
I mean, just sitting in front of a television and have to choose one of 400 channels. That's stressful, which is the best channel to pick. I've seen many patients in their 20s who come in to see me with palpitations, different disorders that I relate to stress. You're right. And it's interesting, if you go back later and listen to the question you just asked me, it was stressful just listening to it, because we're in a time where stress is part of our lives, unfortunately. The digital age, everything, it's hard to just be quiet. You hear people talking about maybe we should have a weekend where we put our iPhones down, take off our headphones, and just try and turn everything off. I have a son who loves to camp, and he goes out hiking, and he's away from everything for 2 days, and he's very happy. And I think that's a good thing we should all do at times.
I mean, sometimes I sit here and I wonder, like, I look at my phone every day, every hour, every 10 minutes sometimes. Even if I'm saying I'm in a class or I'm doing something with work, I always seem to have my phone in my hand. And I've always wondered, like, maybe just putting it away might make that big of a difference. Do you think that makes that big of a difference in your son's life?
Oh, I agree. I think it's very important. If you guys get a chance, sometimes just sit back and watch some movies or television shows from the 90s or even early 2000s where people weren't walking around with their phones and it wasn't just constant communication. I think people were a lot more relaxed. And I think it's the era we're living in where people are a lot tenser, a lot more stressed, just based on what's the next tweet I'm going to get. It's just amazing what we're doing to ourselves.
And also, back to the social media point, you see a lot more outlets for more distractions, like i.e. drugs. Like back in the day, you saw Nancy Reagan would just say no act for kids not getting involved with those things. Has that changed over the years with that new technology? Is that more of a common theme amongst youth and being more stressed out with those other venues?
Well, I think there have been studies. Again, you can Google it, and there's studies showing about that. Our youth are more stressed out. I think those of us who are a little bit older joke about looking at the youth and saying how many problems they're going to have with their thumbs later on because it's just constantly texting and constantly tweeting. I think that is very stressful, and I think we're seeing problems.
Dr. Stuart Fischer, kind enough to join us here on JoyScore Live. He's been with the Los Alamitos Medical Center since 1985. He is a cardiologist. You've done a lot in your medical career, and we really do appreciate you joining us here on the program. Now, one thing we referenced earlier when we got going was the correlation between stress and a lot of the other headlines, chapters in Joy and Health and Happiness, JoyScore in general. Do you truly believe that with a positive mental attitude, healthy eating habits, a good amount of sleep, a good fitness routine, could that relieve stress in one's life if they are strong in those areas that I just mentioned?
Well, it's not even just me believing it. I think it's been shown in the medical literature that will happen. We talk about leading a healthy lifestyle. Patients with hypertension, it's been shown that one of the first things we do before we even start talking about medications, many of these patients are overweight. You talk about changing the way you're eating, watching your salt, getting exercise, losing weight, and then have the patient come back usually in a week or 2 or 3, and frequently you'll see a drop in their blood pressure. If you knee-jerk and just start them on a medication or a pill, that's not the best thing to do. You have to change their lifestyle. And it's been well shown that people who go out and exercise, you get what's called that endorphin high, that people are happier, fresh air, walking around. You feel better. You feel better if you're eating healthy, if you're exercising. And all those things are related to a good lifestyle and lowering your stress level.
Another point, since you're an average sports Dr. Fisher, a Dodger fan, Yankee fan, XYZ, you also see athletes now talk about being stressed as well publicly, trying to get off their chest. Is that effective for regular folks like us to express that they are feeling stressed and not trying to hide it from everybody else, social media, I guess, from that perspective?
Well, I think it is. I think everyone needs to see their role models, see their mentors, people who they respect, talking about it and realizing that even though you can hit a 100-mile-an-hour baseball, out of the park, you may just go home and just have certain stress also. And it's actually good to talk about it. It's good to see that they're just normal people doing what we all do.
Final thing before we let you go, I know you're a busy guy and you deal with a lot on a day-to-day basis, but you mentioned the professional athlete. Forget professional athlete. Let's look at some of the world's biggest celebrities. One thing we touched on a couple of weeks ago when we were going over Chapter 2, self-esteem, we pulled up this very interesting article, and I believe you may have passed it Dr. B's way, but it was regarding a young man and his bright future in the financial field. He was making six digits at 21, 22 years old. I think you know what I'm getting to here, but he went away from all that. He now works in a fire department, and he's trying to make ends meet in somewhere in Texas, a couple of bedroom apartment, not making anywhere near what he would be if he had stayed on that path, but much happier with what he's doing with his career now. So, as you mentioned, there are a lot of celebrities out there with the millions of followers and the millions of dollars, but they may deal with more stress than you and I.
Well, I think that's been well established through the years. How many celebrities have committed suicide? You think they have it all, and then they lose it. So just because you have fame and just because you have financial security doesn't mean you're going to be happy. It doesn't mean you don't have stress. In fact, sometimes when you have success at a very young age, the problem is what's next. If you have all the success at age 22, what are you going to do when you're 23? And you have to realize you have to maintain that, or trying to maintain a certain lifestyle. That's incredibly stressful, and we've seen people fall off who can't handle it well.
He is Dr. Stuart Fischer, a cardiologist at the Los Alamitos Medical Center. He's been there for 33 years, and, well, I'm sure you don't want to work for 33 more, but if you do, we certainly wish you the best in that. Thank you so much for joining us.
Gentlemen, it's been my pleasure.
Again, Dr. Stuart Fischer, kind enough to join us, a cardiologist at Los Alamitos Medical Center. Great stuff from Dr. Fischer there regarding stress and how it impacts one's day-to-day life, and especially health as we get older and older, as the age begins to go up year by year. They say time moves along quicker the older you get, so it's important to understand where the root of your stress is coming from and try and attack it and try and channel it into a more positive lifestyle. With everything he said, it's interesting how, and it blows my mind every time we take the air, how everything sort of correlates together in joy and health and happiness. I mean, everything. You wouldn't think thoughts, relationships, fitness would be in the same boat, but they're all right there, glued and stuck to each other. Self-esteem, it's like the mantra of it all, really. I mean, it's truly interesting as we move along. And today, of course, we're talking about Chapter 4. We're going over stress here on JoyScore Live. Get at us on social media at JoyScoreInc on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Online at JoyScoreInc.com. What was your biggest takeaway, Mr. Yoxheimer, on Dr. Stuart Fischer's history dealing with stress in the medical field?
I think it's a couple of things. One, as we've already brought up, it can happen to anybody and everyone at all certain points, whether it's small, big. It happens to everyone, even the celebrities, us here in our little studio, the average, and just anybody on the street could be going through a stressful day and you don't even know it. But the thing is, how do we resolve that? And he mentioned exercising. Exercising a big thing. I know reading the book, there's multiple different things that Dr. B lists, whether it be listening to music, relaxation, whatever that means to you, breathing, hobbies, yoga. So I was wondering what your take is on the types of things that you would do to relieve your own stress.
Well, I think the key thing about that last point made, Zach, was relaxing and defining what relaxing is. That's not going on Twitter. That's not going on Snapchat. That's actually sitting down and just relaxing. The song goes, me, myself, and I. Just think about yourself first, not about a like or a view or a posting. Take some me time to reset your own self, to not go nuts. Just relax.
Self-esteem a couple of weeks ago, and I'll keep going back to it literally on every program. Dr. B called it the foundation of JoyScore.
Mm-hmm.
With high self-esteem that is driven from within, it's easier for one to actually relax. And as you said, Jay, relaxing isn't what a lot of folks these days deem relaxation.
Right.
Let me just lay on my bed with my phone on my face and let's hope I don't drop it, because that'll leave a mark and prevent me from posting something for the next week or so. It's exactly what Dr. Fischer touched on. Getting out there, exercising, eating well. It's proven to deliver better results.
Or doing a non-phone activity, like his Dr. said. His son goes camping. I golf. Golfing does not require a posting, a selfie stand-up.
For some people it does.
Some it does, but not me.
I mean, maybe a simple day at the beach. Maybe you go down, you want to sit. Some people tan, some people go in the water. Or a lot of kids nowadays, or people our age, they need a photo. I think the thing is trying to find something to do without always involving your phone with you. What do you think?
I think that's a key point, because you see so many kids now, if you look at their phone, they will look at the photo, get a filter, the right caption. Is it a good photo? Is it a good look? Is it got the best angle or not? Sometimes just have fun.
I think an interesting point is okay, you go have a fun night out with your friends. Say you're going to watch a movie, big movies out now, or you're going to a concert.
Mm-hmm.
How many times are you sitting in your seats or you're standing up screaming wildly? You sit there and so you're looking. I'm gonna pull my phone out real quick. They have their phone out, and you're looking through a screen to another screen, or you're looking through something to experience something. But it's like let's put that away, and let's look at it and experience it. And I know sometimes that's not exactly stressful situations, but sometimes it's just experiencing life and just doing things.
I think a good percentage of stress comes from relationships, or what you hope to be a relationship, and the whole codependency factor comes back into play.
And that's a key point. Rely on spouse to say, is that good enough for you? Do you?
It's not good enough for you, right?
You don't like
right. I'm
that.
content with myself, but because I'm so worried about you, now I'm stressed out.
Right. You overthink what really fun is. Is me going golf? Will you like me going to golf? Going to a golf course? Or is she playing basketball? It doesn't matter what you think. If I enjoy what I'm doing, I should do that without Zach's approval, Chris' approval, whoever's approving it. Shouldn't matter to you. It's what I want to do that makes me happy and that makes me less stressed. Will have me feel better about my own overall joy.
And that's why it's important to have healthy and have good relationships. And I'm not talking solely romantic relationships. I'm talking about friendships. I'm talking about work environment relationships, friendships. I'm talking about I'm so positive and I'm so happy in all of my friendships, relationships, workships, in my occupation environment, that I know nobody's saying anything wrong behind my back. I'm not worried about what they're saying about me, because I'm confident in what that holds, whatever that case may be when it comes to that. So it's very important to understand how just about each and everything correlates within each other here in JoyScore. Earlier on the program, we had Dr. Stuart Fischer, Los Alamitos Medical Center cardiologist, and that was awesome. I mean, being able to hear the whole health side of it, and he brought up Barbara Bush, the passing of the former First Lady a couple of weeks ago, and the broken heart syndrome is a real thing, and it affects millions, multi-millions,
not just presidents either.
Every year, and not all of it gets publicized, but because one can be so invested in something or someone, and when either tragedy in that instance strikes or something doesn't go one's way in another instance, it could have a very, very negative impact on health, especially as you get older.
It happens. It's in everyone's family. Like, case in point, my family. I had it happen to me twice with aunts that have been together for a long time with their husbands, and they passed away, and boom, spouse is in the hospital because they have broken heart. They've been together so long that they cannot live without their partner. Saying it's a bad thing, but when you're with somebody for a long period of time, you're used to, you know what they're going to do every day. It just breaks your heart.
So why is it so important at a young age to recognize where stress comes from and how to attack it the right way?
I think the big thing is if you don't figure out the sooner, I mean, obviously there's different obstacles that you have to go through as you're a kid. You have to learn how to do your homework, sit still, and just learn how to go through a day as you get older. All right, you have to learn how to deal with money, relationships with people, whether it's actual relationships or just friendships. And then, all right, financial stuff such as taxes and all the other stuff, college stuff, and getting a job. So just learning how to deal with things going forward in life, and just knowing what causes stress in you, whether it's, do you have too many things go on in your head? Do you just do too many things at once? We see people who join this club, do sports all at the same time, or is it just something simple as maybe it's just something affecting me one thing at one time?
Yeah, I think to put it in perspective, I guess to speak metaphorically now, life is like a very long test. And each day you're trying to take notes on how to improve yourself. Some days you may make a mistake. Some days you may learn something. But you should try to find the better notes in each experience you go through. So, for instance, like, if I know the 405 is always going to be backed up, I should probably go on a different freeway or the streets. If I know I'm going into that, when I get to 45, 405 is going to be backed up, I will go away from that freeway so I won't be as stressed out when I'm in my mid-40s. You're trying to always improve yourself day by day, so you're not making smaller things when you're younger a bigger problem when you get older. You're trying to make things easier as you go older in age.
Something I was thinking about, we discussed broken heart syndrome, but another thing I've noticed is people who work at a specific job until they're very late in their years. Say you're a teacher until your late 80s, or say there's coaches and they're coaching for forever, or say you're just doing something for a long time. What do you think about the stresses of work going on into your life? Or there's when you stop working, how do you deal with the lack of stress or lack of doing something, if you get what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And there are cases in which you find so much joy in what you do. And obviously everyone's goal at one point or another, you know, when you're a little kid, you want to be this, you want to be that. When I grow up, I want to be this. When I grow up, I want to be that. Some of us are fortunate enough to be in that position. Some of us aren't. And for those that have to adjust to quote-unquote reality, that's when a lot of stress can set in. Oh, well, I mean, things are going well now, but what's going to happen in a couple of years? Preparing for stress that may be on the horizon is very important.
It's just interesting, just studying stress as a whole thing, having Dr. Fischer on with us, and just wondering, like, how to deal with it and just trying to identify it and manage it. It's just a whole big circle. And as you mentioned earlier, Chris, how it's all connecting. You would think, all right, my self-esteem, exercise, which we'll get into later on, thoughts, and just everything together. It's just how to identify it. And sometimes it's very simple, and sometimes it's just very difficult to do in nature.
I think also getting back to when you were hosting Zack relationships, having people that are in your circle that are smarter than you, so you're not always making that big time decision. So you have people to bounce off ideas of. So you're not always pressing about, I gotta make the big choice because always they're looking up to me. Sometimes you don't have to. You can defer to someone that knows, like Dr. Fischer knows. He knows stress because he's a doctor just every day. Having people that know how to fix your problems can limit your stress on a personal level.
Stress can often be seen as pressure, right?
Yes.
I am in the process of digging up one of my new favorite quotes. Here it is. Patience eases pressure on the pursuit of perfection. Now, nobody will ever perceive, no one will ever achieve perfection. There's a lot of P's there in that sentence. I had to get them all out. No one will ever achieve 100% fulfillment, 100% perfection. But patience eases the pressure on the pursuit to perfection. Mm-hmm. We're all thriving to be somewhere, eventually, at one point or another. Some of us are closer than others. Some of us will get there. Some of us won't. But it all comes from within. Certain stress you have to sort of wait on. Certain stress is out of your hands. Mm-hmm. How important is patience when it comes to stress?
Very important. You cannot fix every problem that day or that second. Sometimes you have to wait a little bit. I guess, as someone said, trust the process and let it work out.
I think coming for me, specifically for my stress, it's another P, procrastination. So having to understand patience versus, all right, now you're waiting too long, or you're not doing anything. Or another P, we're pushing it away, pushing it off to the side. So I think the thing is balancing between being patient and understanding what stuff takes time, and understanding sometimes you just need to get up, go do something, go take a run.
I think it's more about having constant persistence, another P word, I guess. A lot of P's tonight. Persistence, patience, whatever. Having constant, persistent in what the long-term goal is. Why am I doing this? I'm trying to get better for my personal self. I'm trying to improve my overall health. I'm not trying to please my friend across the street. We're trying to fix our own selves, not trying to fix somebody I can't see via a like on Instagram. That's how you fix and limit the stresses of somebody you can't control of. Fixing the stresses of the outside where you can't always see from.
We're talking about Chapter 4, Stress and Joy and Health and Happiness. Next week, we drive into money. Well, money is one of the largest roots to my stress. I think it's one of the largest roots to
most people's stress.
Mine too. That's why they say, well, enjoy being a teen, enjoy being in school while you can, because the real world's tough. And boy, when you're in those transition years and you're happy to be getting out of school, and hey, who cares if you got to deal with a little money stress? I got a little bit of freedom on my side now.
Not so much. Enjoy the process of school. Enjoy it while you can, because it doesn't last long. Because as soon as you go out the real world, as they say, money talks.
I mean, sometimes you wonder, all right, you're so stressed taking classes, and then you step out of that, and you deal with different types of stress.
Well, different classes of gas bill and car note and rent or down
insurance.
Payments. Yeah, that's a class too.
Hospital bills. All sorts of things coming back to affect us in our daily lives, and just understanding each step and each path we take into life.
Money next week, man. Is someone going to be kind enough to bring a stack of some real money that we can sort of just
real or fake?
No, real.
Where's it coming from?
I was actually in a communications class back in my collegiate days, and a woman in the class I took went up to the front, and perhaps she read Joy and Health and Happiness. Maybe Dr. B had been her professor of yesteryear. But she went up in front of everybody in the class, took a crispy, real is the key here, real $50 bill and just ripped it in half. And said, I'm still happy.
Were you? Were you happy seeing that dollar bill?
No,
ripped in?
I would have loved to have the 50. My point being, I think we'll find some correlation again next week in stress and money, and how to be less stressed when you have less money, which may be the answer to 95% of a lot of people's stresses.
Yeah.
Or the opposite side, what happens when you have all the money and you're just not joyful or happy at all? How can you find something that helps you when you have, quote unquote, everything, but in essence, nothing?
Or in essence, you have a lot of money, you're overjoyous with how you spend your money. And it limits to being at a lower tier, and now you're back to not being joyful again. How do you where is the balance between having lots of money and not overusing it in one instance, and spread out over a period of time to be joyful from 21 to 81 to 91, etc., to going from 21 to 22, and you're now just broke? How to make that stretch out and make it more persistent, more prosperous for generations behind you going forward?
And setting goals, setting sights, having aspirations is vital, and it's almost a necessity. Young, wealthy human beings are oftentimes the most depressed because they sit there and they think to themselves, hey, I have everything. This is great. This is great. This is great. This is getting old.
Yeah.
What now? I'm 25. What now? Now I'm stressed. What am I going to do for the rest of my life? It's a great point. It really is. There are two sides to every spectrum, especially the money aspect of everything. So I'm sure we will be able to dig up a number of articles involving money and how it affects us as human beings on a day-to-day basis. I'm sure, hopefully we have a special guest, because Dr. Fischer was awesome.
He was great.
Dr. Fischer was awesome.
He was great.
He's a JoyScore board member, so he's a day one guy. So I'm sure he'll be tuned in again. We got to get him back on. I mean, I know his specialty is a cardiologist, and I mean,
Schedule's filled as well.
his schedule's very full. We're lucky that we got him in here.
Yeah.
He was a soft commit when we got organized for the show. But this is JoyScore Live. We've been chatting about Chapter 4, chatting about stress. What's one thing each of you will do before the next episode to relieve some stress in your everyday life?
1, turn off my phone more, and 2, relax and just go outside and not do anything phone-based activities.
I think for me, I always get in stressful situations. I sit where I work at my other job at a radio station, and I have all these things that come up at me. And also being a student, it's finals. That's like the worst week of all time, or all the assignments at the end of the year. And you sit there and you're like, what do I do? I can't sit in my room for hours and hours on end worrying about everything. I mean, yes, I do have to spend time studying or writing papers, but I can't do that 24/7 in these final 2 weeks. The big thing is, the thing I found that I enjoy to relieve my stress is exercise. And my specific exercise, go play basketball. Obviously, there's certain different things, whether it's going hiking, going running, or doing different things. But for me, it was playing basketball. And it's not like very competitive basketball. It's just running back and forth and doing stuff like that. Or other things is playing board games or card games with the family. Those are fun times that I've enjoyed, just to de-stress, relax, and know, all right, I'm going to be perfectly fine here, guys. Like, just find those little things that make you happy, very joyful, and also just give you a step back to breathe.
It's all about how we manage stress and how we factor stress into the day-to-day.
Next week is fitness.
So the big thing is, as we had the special guest this week with Dr. Fischer, next week we have to talk about fitness.
I was okay. I was under the assumption we were.
Flip a plan. See, sometimes that's the fun. JoyScore Live. Sometimes you got to flip things, turn things on your head.
We're all the way live, so you know,
All the way.
We don't have the Super Bowl Janet Jackson.
Whoa there.
Sometimes. Okay, well,
Fitness.
that might correlate with stress even more.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Fischer had touched on a number of his clients that had stress health issues. It was surrounding a lack of fitness.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a couple of fitness experts I know we're hoping to have on the program next week. And shoot, look, not all of us can afford a personal trainer, but boy, if I'll take the fitness helps where I can get them.
Mm-hmm. I sure could too.
I would love fitness help. Sometimes it's doing stuff or how to do certain things right, or what time of day will make me happier, like getting up in the morning or working out late at night. What types of things, little things that might help my personal joy and stuff like that affect my daily routine and my weekly routine.
Great.
Fitness. So I suppose my question changes. What step in fitness will you take within the next week?
Well, like Zack said, get some more hoops in. Never hurt nobody. Always a fan of the young basketball, and also some more golf too.
I think for me, I mentioned basketball is my stress reliever, and it is quite my fitness. But I think the thing is trying to hit the weights a little bit more. I'm a bit thin.
A little
thin. I'm a little thin. So I think the thing is adding some more muscle and just helping me build my self-confidence, self-esteem, tying it into other chapters, and helping me understand it's not what other people think about me. It's just confidence in myself, fitness, getting more fit, and just de-stressing, which is also another helpful thing of just being fit or doing something as much as exercise.
Exercise is next week. Money will come at a later date. And I suppose that may be the moral of one of today's stories. Sometimes you do what you love and the money will follow.
There you go.
Isn't that a very popular quote these days?
Yes, it is.
So try and relieve that stress and understand that the money is coming. The conversation is coming here on JoyScore Live. That is locked in. But next week we'll talk fitness. So we'll get fit and then we'll get rich, right?
Yes.
I just need to get fit, and hopefully that can just help me with my JoyScore.
For Zachary Anderson Yoxheimer, for Jay Holloway, another special thank you to our special guest here today, Dr. Stuart Fischer, a cardiologist for 33 years at Los Alamitos Medical Center. I'd love to be one place for 33 years.
You can be.
You can be. You just got to relieve the stress.
Yeah, and be more joyful.
Okay. So we say so long to you from our JoyScore studios. This has been JoyScore Live. We'll see you next week when we touch on fitness and put on our running shoes and sweat a little bit. Good night, everybody.